All right, you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, I got another one like the other one. So check it out, you guys. Before I get into the story, let me just say this real quick, because it seems like YouTube is not giving out notifications again. And this is an important week because this Thursday, we're going to make an announcement about something that has been it's been in play for the last couple of months. I mentioned it to you guys a while back. This is something that that we've been working on. So make sure you guys go in the community and early Thursday morning to see if we posted a time that we're going to run a live that day, because that day is the day that we're going to announce it. The 28th is a day it's an important day, but Thursday we're going to run a live. So make sure you guys go to the community page and check to see if we put any kind of updates in there. Anyways, let me get straight to this story right here. This is another long story. I'm going to try to get through it and try to make it as simple and as concise as I possibly can. A lot of you should know about this story right here. It's something that happened a while back. I'm not sure exactly what time frame, but I know that this happened before, while everybody was still locked in the SHU program, while all the C's were still locked up. So everybody was still stranded, and they were all back there when this happened right here. Everything at this time was done through kites. It was done the old way. Through a lot of the stuff was through visiting, through phone calls, through visits. It was slow motion. Information moved like molasses. Anyways, this story right here is another spinoff of another story that I just previously told you guys about. And basically what this was about was an individual, Sureño, out of Los Nietos, basically ended up getting burned by some cat that ended up getting shipped out to Calipatria, if you guys remember, or Centinela. I always get those two mixed up. He ended up getting shipped out to Centinela after he sent some bogus money orders to this guy's family. They got the money orders. They tried to cash him. They found out that the money orders were fraudulent, and they almost slapped a case on him. So, this individual from Los Nietos ended up getting transferred later on. He would end up on the same yard with this guy. However, him and Thumper from Anaheim ended up bumping heads. They bumped heads. If you guys remember what happened after that, this individual was tied into Indio from El Sereno. He was tied into him. He was one of his primos. However, Thumper was also one of Indio's primos. So they bumped heads on the yard. At the end of it, this guy from Los Nietos ended up stripping Thumper of his position. He took over, and this was all done under the clearance of Indio and Gangster from the Avenues. And then the first part of the story, it also involved Fernie B from the Dog Patch, and then you had Turtle from Colton. They were kind of just, because that yard was generating so much money, they were getting a piece of the pie. But that yard right there was assigned to Indio and Gangster. So really, Fernie B and Turtle, they're not really too much involved in this story until the end. In the end, they make a collective decision based on the circumstances, based on another conflict that would develop on the yard. And you guys will see what I'm talking about when we get there. So if you guys remember, this first it originally started in Folsom. Then this ended up spilling over into Centinela. So we're on Centinela again. So we're back in Centinela, and this yard again is being ran by Indio and Gangster from the Avenues. So, the other interesting thing about this story right here is that it actually involves a situation where the state and federal branches of the Mexican mafia end up bumping heads, and a lightweight conflict develops. You don't hear too many stories about, the Mexican mafia, the federal guys and the state guys bumping heads or getting into it. You guys have heard a lot about, the Nuestra Familia, the state and federal branches going into a conflict that lasted years up until almost present. It's still going on right now. It's basically sputtering out. It's at the very end where, this lasted for almost a decade. There was another federal indictment. So now they're getting ready to go to the federal system, and there's a huge conflict. Everybody's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. But you guys have heard a lot about the Nuestra Familia and that power struggle between the state and federal systems. This is one of the only stories, besides another one that I'm going to be telling you guys about in the very near future, where you hear about the Mexican mafia bumping heads, the state and federal guys bumping heads. And this story, it's not on a big scale. It's a small, it's a small conflict, but it's a conflict nonetheless. Well, actually, on the state level, it ended up turning into something that could have been a lot more serious. So again, like I told you when I first started this story, this yard is being ran by Indio from El Sereno and Gangster from the Avenues, but it's generating so much money. Centinela was generating so much money, the level 4 yard over there, that Turtle from Colton and Fernie B from Dog Patch were getting cut in on it. They were getting a piece of the pie. That's how much money this yard was generating. So if you guys remember another part of the story, Thumper from Anaheim was basically stripped after a 5-on-5 conflict erupted out on the yard. Basically, Thumper supporters and this guy from Los Nietos, they had a showdown on the yard. It ended up turning physical. A couple individuals jumped in, backing up Thumper. A couple of these guys from Los Nietos, they jumped in. And next thing, before you know it, it's a full-blown 5-on-5 fisticuff. It's a small little melee, but they get into it. They got into it. That turned into the guy from Los Nietos. He had to strike up a report, file that with Indio, basically let him know what happened, how it got physical. Because once it got physical, that, they were required to report. He was required to file a report, let him know what happened, why it got physical. And from that point on, Indio felt like Thumper was in the wrong. So from that point on, Indio gave this guy from Los Nietos the authority to strip Thumper and basically to run that yard himself under his crew. So after this guy from Los Nietos, after he strips Thumper, he basically starts to establish the yard under his control. He strips Thumper. He strips everybody that was a part of his mesa. He strips everybody, obviously, that was part of his entourage. And everybody that was supporting Thumper, they all got stripped. So he's out there on the yard. He's establishing the yard under his control. So he's out there getting his entourage together, establishing his security and establishing his mesa. So the Sureños, they obviously have a different chain of command, a different way of setting up their leadership. The Norteños, the NF, it's more paramilitary structure. It's more militant structure. But the Sureños, they actually have somewhat of a, it's a collective. They have a council or a mesa that's part of like it's a council that they use, I guess, to vote, major decisions out on the yard. And it's all part of, their leadership system, their chain of command. And they have these entourages. But this is all a part of a new leadership. So the NF, they obviously have entourages now too. But I imagine the chain of command, their securities and how they set up their leadership councils, their bodies, it remains the same. It basically remains the same. As far as I know, none of that has changed. The leadership, they still established the leadership under the same concepts that I remember. So again, like I said at the beginning of the story, during this time right here, everybody was still stuck in the SHU program. Todd Ashker and the Danny Troxel, that civil suit had not yet, it was still going through the courts. So everybody was still stranded in the SHU programs, and everything was being done the old-fashioned way, the way that it used to be done, through kites, through visits and things like that. And like I said, it's a slow-moving process. There's a lot of lag time. There's a lot of security that these guys got to go through, as far as like if they're coding up letters, it's got to make it out through the mailroom, past gang intel and all that good stuff. The other thing though that the Sureños had set up, or the C's, the Mexican Mafia had set up, is that they had secretaries out there where these guys, their figureheads, the leaders that were on the yards would call the secretary and they would relay their information to the secretary. The secretary would then relay that information back to the Mexican Mafia member that was assigned to that yard. So that's how Indio was getting all his information, Indio and Gangster. It was all coming through their secretary or their contact person. So at that time, they did have cell phones out there, but it didn't do the Mexican Mafia no good because they were still stuck in the SHU program. All it did was make it a little bit more convenient for, the leaders on the yards to reach out to the secretary. So they didn't have to jump on the blue phones, the prison phones, the recorded phones. So like I told you guys in the past, this 4-yard in Centinela, it's the only 4-yard over there. All the other yards are 3 yards. It's the only 4-yard, and it's a 270 yard. The only thing that's different is that there's a fence that goes right down the middle of the yard, and it separates the upper yard from the lower yard. Other than that, it's a 270, it's a level 4, and it's the only yard over there like that. So when this guy, I'm just gonna call him Los Nietos. So when Los Nietos, when he stripped Thumper and he took control of the yard, the OC card was furious. Thumper was from OC, and basically all his leadership, his mesa, his entourage, everybody that was supporting him, they were all from OC. So when Los Nietos came in there and he took over, he basically wiped out his entire leadership, everybody that was working with him. All these guys that were out there running dope, they were out there controlling the yard, administering discipline under Thumper. They were active out there on the yard. All these guys were out there working with Thumper. Now, they all been relieved of their positions. They're all relieved of their positions, and imagine how they were feeling. They're out there on the yard, and they all been stripped. They were out there involved in the dope game. Now they're not making no money. All these guys that were under them, now most of these guys are being put in positions, and now they're over them. These are the same guys that they were putting on concrete status, the guys that they were disciplining. These were the same guys that they were making kickback, whatever percentage of cell phones they were bringing in, Glavo. Now they're the ones that are running the yard. So these guys, they're pissed off. They're all pissed off. They've been relieved of their positions. They're not making no money now. And, everybody's upset about the way that everything went down. There was a 5-on-5 fist fight. It got physical. And this created some bad blood out there on the yard. Although, that incident, it stopped it. There was no more physical conflict that derived from that incident right there. It was over as far as that. It was something that happened. And once the C's found out, those individuals they felt were responsible or were in the wrong, they were stripped. This is one of the things that's a little bit different about the Nuestra Familia and the Norteños as well. If I was to go into a yard and I was to strip another C or even a hermano that was in a position, I wouldn't go in there necessarily strip the entire leadership unless there was something going on that yard that involved the entire leadership. Like they were in cahoots doing something that was wrong. They were allowing, maybe dropouts to program out there or something like that. Or, they were doing something foul, charging homeboys, or if they were involved like that, I would strip them too. But typically the way that it's done with us is I would go in and I would remove the OA or the regimental commander, and the rest of the leadership, I would basically take that leadership over, and it would not consist of just all guys from San Francisco. That right there, it wouldn't be tolerated within the NF. It's looked at as a straight act of favoritism, homeboy favoritism. You got everybody from the city or from the Bay Area card in positions. And, that in itself creates a lot of conflict. That's an invitation to create a lot of conflict. I've had, all my leaderships, all my chain of commands consisted of, homeboys from different areas, the Valley, San Jose, the Bay Area, up by Santa Rosa. It just depended. It depended on, each individual's, their qualifications or their ability to lead. That's what it depended on. But there was never, one car against the other car. That's something that's not tolerated. The other thing is Los Nietos, he was an instigator. He liked the fact that he was able to come up in there, strip Thumper, put hands on him, and now he's walking around the yard, with the smirk on his face, smiling, laughing at all these cats from the OC. Like, what? Yeah, we came in here. We just took, we took over, and I stripped all you cats. He might not have said that, but from the way it was told to me, that's the way that he was acting. He was walking around on the yard with his chest poked out, smiling, kind of like rubbing it in their face. So these guys from the OC, the guys from the OC card, they're out for blood. They're pissed off. Again, they don't like the fact that this guy was able to come in and take the yard the way he took it. They had positions throughout the whole yard, and now, they're all stripped. They don't have no say on that yard, and they're pissed off about it. And they didn't have no qualms about, letting it be known that they didn't like the situation. So they're out there mean mugging, you know what I mean? They're out there walking by each other out there on the yard, mean mugging each other. And they peep the whole power play. They peep the power play, and they're looking at it as if it's an OC Los thing now. It's the OC car against the Los car. And basically at the end of the day, that's what it was, because Los Nietos, that's what he did. He went and he recruited all guys from Los. There wasn't nobody that was from the OC car. He didn't keep nobody that was in a position prior to him taking it over. He took them all out, and he put all in guys from Los. And the other thing, if you remember in the first part of this, I told you guys that, when Los Nietos, when he relieved Thumper, he told him, you know what, give me the bag, give me the clavo, turn over everything that you had going. So these guys don't even got no money now. They're not making no money. They don't got the clavo. They're not in control of that. Now it's Los Nietos and all his boys from Los that are out there slinging the dope. They're controlling the numbers, and they're all making money now. Again, my boy, he kept emphasizing, he's like, the tension was thick. It was like these cats from OC were walking around like they had a mouthful of lemon drops or something. Like they were pissed off. So what ended up happening is, basically at the end of the day, Thumper, he couldn't do nothing about it. He couldn't do nothing about it. None of his guys that were under him could do nothing about it. They got stripped. It was cleared by Indio and Gangster from the Avenues. So even though they didn't like it, there was nothing that they could do. They had to accept it. But, they were trying to figure out a way to regain control of that yard. So what ended up happening is an individual by the name of Midget from Orange County. He drives up, and he's somebody that's known as a prison politician. This guy gets into the politics everywhere he goes. He gets straight into the thick of it. So he pulls up, and it's just a matter of time before he finds out what happened. Thumper gets in his ear. A lot of these other guys from Orange County, they get at him, and they're like, man, check it out. This cat, he pulls up. We had this conflict. We were out here running the yard. Everything was going smooth. This cat pulls up. Him and Thumper end up getting into it. His guys, these other guys, they back him up. And next thing you know, we're throwing blows on the yard. And as a result, Indio gives him the authority to strip Thumper. So he took us all out. There's nobody from OC in an authority position. So when Midget hears about this, he don't like it. Midget don't like it. And he's somebody that's been around. Like I said, he's a prison politician. He's known to be a prison politician. But the thing about it is, while all this was going on, Sana had just paroled from the feds. He gets out of the feds, and, for those of you that know Sana's history, he's considered to be like the godfather of Orange County. He's like a modern day god out there. He passed away, rest in peace, Sana. But, when he was alive, Orange County, he owned Orange County, and they idolized him out there. So anybody that was involved in the politics that was, part of Orange County, they were tied in with Sana somehow, some way. So Sana, he gets out. Sana gets out, he paroles from the feds. So this is where the conflict kind of starts between the federal branch of Mexican Mafia leadership and the state branch. So Sana gets out, he's out on the streets, and as soon as Sana gets out, he starts taking control of the streets. He starts to assert his influence out there. One of the things that he did was he got everybody together at El Chicano Park, and he implemented the no drive-by edicts. The other thing he tried to do is he tried to unify a lot of the gangs out there. A lot of the gangs were going at each other out there on the streets. They had conflicts that were going on for a while. And what Sana was doing was he was deeming whole hoods. He would put whole neighborhoods on disregard status.
Yes. What's happening? Watch out. There's this Baco from Brownside and these vatos from Townsend, going over there tomorrow, capping, shooting paisas, homie. Shooting the homies' uncles and shit like that. They're not even asking where you're from or not. I'm from Brownside. See, Brownside and Townsend. And, you know, yo no quiero, like, I told the homies, you know what, kick back, because, you know, I can't work it. They're doing something with you, ¿sí me entiendes? Los vatos de Townsend. So I don't want to step on your toes or nada, ¿sí me entiendes? Entonces, see if we can look into that, ¿qué pasa? ¿Sí me entiendes? You know,
Yeah, Brownside,
Brownside.
They took the light off of him, we'll put it right back on him again.
Yeah, porque, you know, they just shut the phone down.
Yeah.
No están preguntando que se llama Wacko, el vato.
Wacko, get Brownside.
Watch out.
Okay.
Watch out. This is for me, homie.
Okay.
Con todo respeto, homie.
Get on him,
Estoy trabajando yo y, you know, just tú sabes, homie, gracias por todo.
Stay out of here, homie. Stay out of here. Stay out, homie. Really happening in there, homie.
So,
Stay
you want me to get back on you on that? ¿Qué pasa? Because right now I told the homies, you know, palabras on the street right now. That's from don't go downtown, se no hagas nada.
Yeah.
Let me see what's up. You know what I mean? Because, you know,
Get back to me tomorrow, homie.
get back with me mañana, homie.
Tomorrow, around this time, whatever.
On this time?
Yeah. Or in a couple of days.
Hey, what's up with Chico, homie?
I don't know where he's at. He's got a number.
¿Qué pasó? Oh, you know what? You got a new number?
I don't have his number. I've been waiting for him to call me.
I haven't been able to reach him or nada, homie. Tampoco,
Yeah, I'm waiting for his call, man. I've been waiting for it since yesterday.
Yeah, was that right?
Yeah.
Oh, no, lao. ¿Qué te iba a decir? You got a new number?
I got the same number.
Okay.
I'm going to get a new number. Another phone because the piece of the voice keeps going, dying out of me. It doesn't ring until I'm talking and it cuts cut off.
Okay. And as far as in the neighborhood, ahorita nadie está haciendo nada, homie. Neta. The parts that we're doing something, they're all in Mexico on vacations right now. You know, whatever. I'm just thinking, if I got your back on whatever I need to do, homie, you know what I mean? As far as I clean up the windows and all that matter.
You got that.
All right, homie, and let's see if we can look into that.
I'll do that. So I'll be on there.
Entonces, ¿qué hecho mañana?
Yeah.
All right, homie, muchas gracias.
If they were out there and they weren't in compliance with some of his policies, he deemed the whole hood, or he put them on disregard status, or he put them on freeze. What Sana was doing was, you know, he was trying to stop the conflict that was going on out there on the streets between some of the different gangs out there. Some of the different gangs had been embroiled in conflicts for years. And his thing was to go out there to try to unify those gangs. And those gangs that weren't in compliance with his policies, what he would do is he put that whole neighborhood on disregard status. He put them on disregard status. They go to the county. They'd have a green light on them if they were from that neighborhood. And eventually, you know, if they didn't get cleared off of disregard status, then they stayed no good. But that's how Sana was asserting his control on the streets. Now, the other thing that he did was, because he got out on the streets, it's a lot easier to control things on the streets. The communication is more fluid. You have a lot more resources out there. So what Sana thought he could do is he thought he could put small crews together and encroach on other Mexican mafia members' territories. And he was trying to do that in different prisons. And again, his influence, he had a lot of reach. You had a lot of dudes from OC in a lot of different prisons, a lot of different level 4 yards. This conflict right here was one conflict that happened on that yard. But Midget, being that he was from Orange County, he was somebody that was tied in with Sana. He had Sana's contact info and he was in contact with them. So Midget gets there, and right off the bat, he's got a chip on his shoulder. As soon as he finds out what's happening, and it's like a Los versus OC thing, he's pissed off, and now he's trying to, utilize the resources and the influence he has to regain that control, to give it back to OC. So he reaches out to Sana. And as soon as he gets to Sana, Sana's pissed off. He's like, hey, what the fuck's going on with Thumper? He knew Thumper was there, and Thumper, at some point, I guess he was communicating with Sana, and he stopped, probably because he was no longer running that yard. Whatever the reason was, Sana reached back out to Midget and was like, what's going on with Thumper? How come he hasn't reached out? So that's when Midget relays it back to Sana. Look, this is what happened over here. This individual, Los Nietos, he pulls up, he gets into a conflict with Thumps, and the next thing you know, they're going at each other out here on the yard, and Indio, and then he starts dropping the names of the other C's that were involved. Indio, from El Sereno. Then you got Gangster from the Avenues, Fernie B from Dog Patch, and Turtle from Colton. You know, they basically give them a green light to take everybody, you know, out of positions. They strip Thumper, they take, you know, his Mesa, they take everybody that was under him, everybody that supported him, they stripped them all. This individual, now he's out here on the yard, he's putting, you know, his Mesa together. All these guys, they're all from Los. You know what I mean? So it's a Los versus OC thing out here. That's what they're doing. So Sana, you know, Sana was one of those Mexican mafia members that had a lot of influence. He had a lot of power, and he was the type of individual that when he pulled up somewhere, he didn't care about stepping on nobody's toes. You know, he made decisions, and if somebody didn't like it, he'd deal with it as it came. But he was one of those Mexican mafia members that just, you know, he exceeded his reach. Everybody, you know, there's lines that you don't cross, because if you do, then it creates dissidence, it creates confusion. But Sana didn't really care about that. Like I said, he's one of those older guys that, you know, they get older and they develop this sense, you know, this sense of mind of, you know, I do what I want, you know, I'm such and such, and that's just the way it is. So Sana basically tells Midget, he's like, check this out, man. I'm giving you clearance to go ahead and regain control of that yard. Go ahead and take that yard back. Go ahead and establish a Mesa. Go ahead and, you know, recruit all the homies that you need to recruit over there and get that yard back up under our control. So he gives Midget a green light to basically go out there and get on Los Nietos and all his, you know, all the guys that he's putting in positions now. This is creating a conflict. So now Midget, now that he's got the go ahead from Sana to go ahead and take the yard over, all these other guys that are from OC that were formerly a part of the leadership under Thumper, they all start pumping Midget up. Hey, you know, we got you, man. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you need, you know, you got our backing. You know, let's take this yard back. This is our yard. You know what I mean? And the big homie gave you clearance. Let's do this. Again, they don't like the fact that, you know, not this individual didn't just come out there and take the yard over. And he didn't, you know, it wasn't just that they got stripped, but it was also that this individual came out there, put his hands on Thumper, beat him down on the yard, and then took the yard over. And now he's walking around and he's loving every minute of it. That's why these guys were getting more pissed off. And that's why, you know, that conflict was starting, it was starting to escalate. You know, the other thing that's crazy is, you know, like I said, Sana's the type of individual that he basically does what he wants to do. But the crazy thing about this is that when Midget, you know, basically he relayed back to Sana that Indio, Gangster, Fernie B, and Turtle, you know, were backing up these other individuals. He didn't care about that. He didn't care about that. Midget told him that, you know, this guy, Los Nietos, he had the firm backing of these C's, and, you know, these guys are in the state. Keep that in mind. Sana came out the feds. So there's a conflict that's starting to develop right there. And again, it's small, on a small level. It's not like a lot of guys back in federal prison, Mexican mafia members started, you know, rallying behind Sana. But still, you got the state and the federal system right now bumping heads. So while all this is going on, while Midget is reaching out to Sana, and, you know, these guys from OC, they're starting to get deep out there. Los Nietos, he kind of sees what's going on. He reads the yard. You know, they're out there, and he's kind of seeing what's going on in the yard, that they're kind of rallying up and they're rallying behind Midget. So Los Nietos, he reaches out to Indio's secretary, Indio and Gangster's secretary, and he's like, hey, check this out. I need to find out who this dude Midget is from OC. I need to find out who he is, what he's about, because, you know, this individual's over here. He's causing waves. He's causing problems for me. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of tension on the yard between OC and the Los car. And, you know, this individual, if he continues to create these kind of problems, we might have to get rid of him. So I need you to reach out to Indio and, you know, give me the 411 on this dude. So keep in mind, again, there's a lot of lag time. It's not like in real time like it is right now. Right now, these guys out there on these main lines, Indio, all these other guys, they all got cell phones. So if they need to get a message somewhere, it happens in real time. They literally pick up the phone, make a phone call, and they can get a decision right there. But being that it's the old way of doing things, they got to go through these routes. There's lag time, but it's not in real time. It's not like they can just reach out and call him, in his cell in Pelican Bay shoot program, and then they have to wait until it gets back to Los Nietos. So he's trying to run a make on Midget. He's trying to find out what Midget's about because he sees that Midget is taking a lead role out there on the yard. He's somebody that obviously he has a little bit of influence within the OC car. He's somebody that has been around, and you can clearly see that he's got some influence out there. So it concerned Los Nietos. He needed to find out who he was, a little bit of history about him. He finds out what he needs to find out about him, and then he gets that information back to Los Nietos. And basically he told Los Nietos, he's like, look, this individual Midget, he is, he's legit. He's under Sana. He's from the OC. He's somebody that's been around. He's a primo. He's got a lot of authority under Sana. And, he's got the authority to do certain things under Sana, but not on our yards. Sana is part of the federal system. He came from the feds. He has jurisdiction over other states, but California, Califas, they don't got no jurisdiction over any of the state prisons in California, especially these yards that are assigned to me. So fuck what he's talking about. Fuck what he's telling Midget. So literally, when Indio gets word back to Los Nietos, when he gets word back about Midget and his crew, they're already putting things in motion. They start moving on some of his mesa. They start moving on other guys that support him, some of his entourage. So all these things start happening at the same time. When Indio finally gets back at Los Nietos, and he tells him that he looked into who Midget was, he finds out who he is. He's somebody that's legitimately under Sana, that he's got a lot of pull, he's got a lot of juice, that he's a primo. While all this is happening, Midget and his crew are already making moves. They're already hitting some of Los Nietos, his mesa, and they're hitting some of his supporters. So the war is already starting on the yard. Now at this point, it's escalated to a full-blown power struggle. So the other thing that Indio tells Los Nietos after he got together with Gangster, Turtle, and Fernie B from Dogpatch, after he got with them, they made a collective decision that, you know what, go ahead and start whacking everybody from OC on that yard. Everybody that's behind Midget, everybody that's riding with him, that's trying to take out our leadership, go ahead and start removing anybody from OC. So that's what they did. And like I said, Midget was already out there putting moves down. So the war had started at that point. It had already kicked off. But these were sporadic incidents. There were incidents that happened, in a building. They caught one of them slipping. They caught another one out there on the yard. It was sporadic. It wasn't a full-blown war yet. However, Los Nietos, at that point, he started to put a crew together to start taking out any and everybody from OC. So it's on now. They got directives to whack everybody from OC that's supporting Midget, everybody that is participating or supporting, their move to knock out their leadership. And, Midget, he's got Sana's blessings to go ahead and regain control of the yard. So now you got two different factions that are going against each other out there on the yard. What my boy told me, by now there's so much tension on that yard between the Los and the OC cars. There's so much tension out there that it finally erupted on the yard. It kicked off. I don't know who rushed who. I don't know if the OC car rushed the Los car, but it kicked off on the yard, and it was a full-blown melee. You got Sureños going at Sureños. The Woods, the Africanos, they weren't involved. They're sitting back wherever they were at on the yard. They're not involved in it. But you got a full-blown war kicking off on the yard. Now keep in mind, this happened on the 270 yard. So there's a fence right there. And there were other Sureños that were on the other side of that fence that were out there and seen this melee kick off. They seen some of their homies over there, guys that they knew, guys that they supported. So as they're watching these guys get off on the other yard, they actually started climbing the fence. You got Sureños throwing themselves over the fence to get over on that yard, to get off, to back up their people. That's how crazy it was. So these guys are climbing over the fence. The gun tower at some point starts shooting block guns at these guys, trying to knock them off the fence. they shoot a couple live rounds, but you had guys that were literally jumping over the fence. So they're out there on the yard, they're going at it, and at some point, they get the yard under control. They get them under control. They prone everybody out, put handcuffs on everybody, and they start taking them off the yard. So that's basically that's what happens. From that point on, the institution, it goes on a lockdown, mainly just the Sureños. At first, it was, a lockdown. Everybody was on lockdown. Then it was determined that it was just the Sureños going at it. It was some kind of internal conflict that they were having out there. So they let everybody else out. But this is when they had those long lockdowns, when, you heard about lockdowns that sometimes were 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, a year. I've heard lockdowns go on for a long time. They don't do that no more, but at this time, they were still doing those long lockdowns. So when the prison finally came off lockdown, when everything was said and done, and, they came back out, when these guys came out, it was like the yard was awash. Everybody that was involved, they had shipped them all out. It was a new crew out there now, and it had to start all over again. A new mesa, a new leadership. It was still Indio's yard, but everybody that was involved in those conflicts, all the guys from the OC car, all the guys from the Lowe's car, they were all gone. Over time, while that lockdown was still in effect, they were shipping them out to different prisons. So, I'm sure there's a lot of you that remember this conflict. This is not something that, would be kept under wraps. Those of you that are aware of it, those of you that might have been there, drop your comments. Let me know what you think about, what happened. Let me know what you think about that incident. If there's something that happened a little bit different, let me know. But there's no question in my mind that this happened out there. There's definitely a lot of people that know about it. Sureños going at Sureños, OC going at Los, those two cars going at each other. There's no question in my mind that a lot of people have to know about this incident right here. Anyways, there's a lot you can pull out of this right here, but this is a lot of internal conflict. There's not too many lessons that somebody can learn from out there on the streets other than to stay out of prison. This is just a story about a conflict that, developed in there between two different branches of leadership. And again, you had the state and federal branches that were also somewhat involved in this conflict. These types of things happen all the time. These internal conflicts, they've happened with different hermanos out there on the yards, as far as within the Norteño collective. And, I can see this happening as it happened. But again, this story was a spinoff on the last one. Apparently, the guy from Los Nietos, he ended up catching a shoot program. I don't know if it was related to this incident or another incident, but he caught a shoot program and ended up going back to the shoot, back up in Pelican Bay. The other thing is, if this would have been, there's one other difference that I just want to point out to you guys. If this would have been a conflict that would have developed within the NF, there'd be heads rolling. There would definitely be heads rolling, because a conflict like this just doesn't happen and there's no accountability. Somebody would have ended up getting in trouble. Somebody of Sana's stature, somebody like that. It obviously would have been somebody of Sana's stature, somebody that called those, that gave clearance to infringe on somebody else's yard. Sana was wrong for that, but those aren't my politics. That's for them to figure out. But if there would have been an NF leader like Sana that would have made that call, he would have been dealt with. That would have been the end of his career, especially if it would have escalated to the point where there was a full-blown melee on the yard. You got Norteños jumping over the fence, getting shot off the fence. That's crazy. I don't know if there was any fallout from this right here. I don't know if Sana ended up catching any heat. I doubt it. Their leadership is a lot different. I'm sure they probably, somebody probably got in his ear about it, or they probably talked about it, made sure that something like this never happens again. Because these are the type of conflicts that could end up, creating a lot of internal just a lot of internal problems within their organization. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Earlier, I put another story in the community, and I believe it was on Gangster. Initially, I had said that that was a story that we were going to release tonight, but I was wrong. I actually had this one right here set up to get released tonight. So that other story on Gangster from the Avenues, that'll be coming out next. Anyways, again, I want to emphasize this one more time, and I'm probably going to say it again tomorrow night when I drop, the next video, or when I drop the next Inner Demons. Thursday, we're going to be making that announcement. So being that YouTube is not, shooting out our notifications, go in the community and see if there's a post in there about what time we're going to run that live on Thursday, so that you guys know and that you don't miss it. It's a pretty, like I said, at least for us, it's a big thing. It has a lot of potential for the channel. So check in the community around 12 o'clock to see if there's a post in there. If there's not, check in again about 3 o'clock, and there should be something in there. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'll be back tomorrow night with another one, and I'm going to try to get out another Inner Demon. We'll be getting out some chapters as well. With that being said, this is your boy B, and I'm out.